Hello again, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Minds on Guard, where we're learning how to guard our minds against all of the attacks, manipulations, and attempts at thought and behavior control that we come under today in the 21st century. In tonight's video, I'm going to wrap up our discussion on the process of subversion as it was articulated by Mr. Yuri Bezmenov back in the 1980s. Please be sure to go back and watch the other videos on the first 3 stages of this process, as well as the ones that discuss the mechanisms of coordinated psychological operations. I'll link those on one of these cards up here in one of the corners. The subject of ideological subversion is really a fascinating one, which is why we've decided to take a few videos to look at the subject. One of my main goals with this series on the 4 stages is to get people thinking about the process in terms of its operation. By that, I mean, how does each step actually wind up being carried out on a society, or any group for that matter? And I even think that this can and does happen in one-on-one relationships, albeit under different terms like gaslighting. Once that core operating process is understood, I think it's important to think about the process in the various degrees of scale that it could actually occur. The benefit of what Mr. Bezmenov did is that he provided a framework that we can use to examine an incredibly wide range of subversion tactics, and then identify the distinctions of each stage in the process so that we may then protect ourselves from the manipulations which are happening at any given time and at any given level. Of course, the details will change, but with some critical analysis and thought, we should be able to apply what we've been learning to any effort or situation where there are people and forces which seek to upend the truth and replace it with some altered version of reality, which then grants power and control into the hands of those who are doing the subverting. As a note, we always want to look for the most beneficial takeaways from any study. There is a massive amount of information out there in the world, and we are in contact with more than ever before in the history of humanity. While this is fantastic beyond description with respect to our opportunity for learning and growing in our knowledge base, it also presents a very real and often difficult issue to overcome. When we are exposed to all of this information, we run the risk of simply gaining a very broad range of shallow understanding about what we happened to be learning. I've seen this in my own journey toward gaining skills and various methods of thinking better and perceiving reality in more accurate ways. It's very easy to surf the internet, to take in videos or read books and articles, but it's a much more challenging thing to take the core essence of the deepest levels of context, meaning, and truth, and then apply that in ways which grow our skills and our minds, and even reach across various subject disciplines to connect what we've been learning in even more complex and fascinating ways. To do that, we have to work hard at seeing through various details and seek depth of understanding, as well as various methods of application and adoption of the core structures of the information into our daily lives. This is a lesson that I'm learning actively right now with some really great help from a mentor. By this, I mean I don't want us to just be casual observers of the world around us, but rather active participants in the way that things work. We've been created with purpose, and one such purpose is to seek to understand God's creation and how we can serve His will as best as possible. I'll touch on that a little bit later in the video, but I wish to stress off the bat that it would be a great error to simply hear this information and then do little to nothing with it. I want us all to gain the skills and understanding so that we can stand against the various methods of subversion which are being used on us at every moment of the day. To do that, we have to take up our respective responsibility to act and make choices which align with truth, serving God above all else. To recap the 3 stages that we have covered so far, we have learned about the demoralization stage, the destabilization stage, and the crisis stage. Now for the rest of this video, I'm going to be discussing things in the context of the 4th stage called normalization. In the first 2 stages, we see the erosion and slow, methodical undermining of the institutions which anchor any society to objective truth, meaning, and mutually beneficial relationships. These terms all share their source for the truth values which align them with reality, in that they are meant to be derived from the tenets and decrees that are contained in sacred scripture, specifically the Holy Bible as the word of the one true and living God of the universe. For objective truth to exist in this world, we must be able to relate what we see back to the source of all creation. This goes for the metaphysical as well as the physical. What we see in the first 2 stages of this subversion process, when we drill down to the core, is an outright attack on the will of God for His creation. There is a subtle, systematic upending of the pillars which uphold order, justice, and morality, hence the terms demoralization and destabilization. Remember, we are talking about a kind of warfare here, and as such, to understand the enemy, we need to be able to think and consider things from their point of view. If I want to make sure that any group of people becomes so estranged from the designs and assurance that there is a God, that He is perfect, that He has ordained all there is in ways which serve His perfection, and that those ways are the ultimate aim for which we should be living, I must do everything I can to negate each and every single one of the assurances which underpinned any group in the first place. Once a person's moral foundations are gone, they are left on the thinnest of ice, to where any nudge is likely to destroy their grip on the truth to a massive degree. A person in this state is as vulnerable to ideological subversion as anyone can possibly be. Once a sufficient number of people have been pushed to this state, the subverters will initiate or take advantage of various crises where threats and dangers, either real or manufactured, are so disruptive to everyday life that the once stable group of people can no longer defend themselves from attacks and infiltration by those who seek to control them. The demoralized are now in a state of real or learned helplessness, and those who are both opportunistic and acting with subversive intent have everything in place to bring about solutions to problems which appear good, right, just, and moral. Yet, that appearance is only on the surface. As we discussed before, once a person has been sufficiently demoralized, there is no amount of truth that you can present to them which will bring them back to an objective, sober state of understanding with respect to reality. This may sound simple and like an overgeneralization, but consider the other studies that we've done on the normalization of narcissism and the ways in which evil is allowed to work and spread throughout humanity. These are the pathways which become the ways of the world during the 4th stage of subversion. In Mr. Bezmenov's lecture, he discusses the process of subversion in the context of the Soviet Union infiltrating other countries around the world and slowly converting them into new communist states under the same banner of the USSR. There's quite a lot to learn in the lectures, and I encourage everyone to go and watch as much of his discussions as possible. In that context, the normalization stage is defined as a kind of reversal of the demoralization and destabilization phases, only now, rather than being accomplished by slow and subtle changes, the normalization is carried out by brute force very rapidly. What's interesting to note is that the goal in the normalization process is actually stability coming out of a crisis. What this means is that those who have offered solutions to the crises, whether they be centralization of power, production, control of money, elimination of established religious orders, family and traditional values, those in control must ensure that there is no way for further demoralization and destabilization to continue, thus prolonging the crisis. What this means is that the very people who were used to bring about the conditions for the powerful to extract even more control and influence must be eliminated from the equation to ensure that these zealous, revolutionary ideologies remain under control. It's a truly sinister notion because what it's ensuring is that any and all dissent, regardless of ideology or allegiance, if it pushes against the new established order, it must be destroyed. The same holds true in other contexts where a new paradigm is established after a crisis. Those who attempt to maintain a grasp on the old ways must be shown to be foolish, regressive, bigoted, and any other manner of insulting and demeaning language. Those who demand further change must be shown to be radical and extreme. The new normal must be maintained at all costs, especially and specifically at the expense of truth. What we have been seeing rise up in the last few decades is an attempt to complete this process of subversion on a global scale. It's coming close to completion here in America, and I believe that we're on the precipice of a major crisis the likes of which we've never imagined. What will follow is a normalization where a new standard of equality will be demanded by those who have given in fully to the postmodernist idea of relative truth, the social justice ideas of oppression versus oppressor, and a full-scale socialization system where anyone who speaks out against the approved, democratically equal ways of thinking and living will be outcast, or worse, non-personed. In short, we are on the path which winds up trading liberty for equality, and we're marching ahead with reckless abandon. I do not care who you support politically. In America, both major parties want the same outcome, but from different approach vectors. That being the total control over the minds and bodies of every single person in this country, and eventually the planet. There are good, honest people who work in those political networks, but I'm speaking about the broad-scale direction that we are being led down through the subversive corruption of our republic, the full-spectrum surveillance through digitization of ID and the monetary supply, as well as the upending of the concept of objective truth, meaning, and human value. We are quite far down the line with respect to the process of subversion, but it is not too late to turn back. And I'm very concerned about the devastation that will be caused given how bad things have already become. But the one certainty that will at least get the process of correction back on track is for people to renew their faith in God and repent of the sinful ways which lead to and open up the avenues for infiltration, subversion, and control over our minds in the first place. I pray that we can come together and stand for truth and use this time that we have to speak about the lies and deception that are being pulled over us all the time. Now let's continue to study these things, work together, and be conformed into the image of Christ, so that we may be the salt of the earth and fulfill our purpose in God's creation. It really is the only thing that anchors us towards truth and goodness in this world. Jesus is the way, and we need to follow him. So until next time, stay safe, stay diligent, and stay vigilant, keeping your minds on guard.